فلما تواطأ أهل الناحية على تصديقها. So when the people of the area were in agreement to believing her, استقصصتها عن حديثها. Then I sought her story. وسألتها عن اسمها وشأنها كله. And I asked her about her name and all about her issue. فذكرت أن اسمها رحمة بنت إبراهيم. And so she mentioned that her name is RaHmah, the daughter of Ibrahim. وأنه كان لها زوج نجار فقير. And that she had a poor carpenter as a husband. معيشته من عمل يده. His livelihood was by the work of his hands. يأتيه رزقه يوما فيوما. His sustenance would come to him day by day. He lived day by day. You know how, like they say in our time, you live paycheck to paycheck. So this is back when it wasn't about paychecks. The good old days. لا فضل في كسبه عن قوت أهله. He did not used to acquire anything more than what his family needed. وأنها ولدت له عدة أولاد. And she had given birth to a number of children for him. وجاء الأقطع ملك الترك. And then Al-Aqta', the king of the Turkmans, came. إلى القرية. He came to the town or to the village. I said Turkman here. So a Turk. So, you know, you have the Turks. So we say Turki. That's Turkish person. A Turk. Turki. And the plural would be Atrak. Al-Atrak. The Turks. But this word At-Turk, Turk, or maybe Turkman, that's broader than what we today might imagine when you say Turkey. So you just think of that country in Europe. And so the people there, the Turks. So there are, let's say, Turks, quote unquote. There are Turks that are not in Turkey. Yani, that's broader. It's broader than what we might imagine. And that being said, then that helps you to understand what's meant when the scholars or some scholars said that Ya'juj wa Ma'juj are Turks. Doesn't mean that necessarily they come from Turkey, or, you know, they were there in Turkey and then they migrated, I guess, and then they wound up somewhere far away, and then Dhul Qarnayn put the wall up and they couldn't get out of there. No, rather, it's a race. وَجَاءَ الْأَقْطَعُ مَلِكُ التُّرْكِ مَلِكُ التُّرْكِ إِلَى الْقَرْيَةِ. And so Al-Aqta', the king of the Turkmens, came to the village or to the town. فَعَبَرَ الْوَادِيَ عِنْدَ جُمُودِهِ إِلَيْنَا. He crossed the valley when the river froze. فِي زُهَاءِ ثَلَاثَةِ آلَافِ فَارِسٍ. He came in the company of, so here Zuha, I'm not sure how to translate that exactly. Well, now I'm just translating by context. Fi Zuha'i thalathati alafi faris. He came in the company of 3,000 horsemen, or troop, or a platoon of 3,000 horsemen, or maybe it means something else. Allah knows best. Here, fi qadri thalathati alafi muqatil. Yani, that's close enough. Wa ahlu Khawarizm yad'unahu kasra. The people of Khawarizm call this Turkman Kasra. That's the title of the old Persian kings. Not that he was a Persian, but that's what they called him. قال أبو العباس والأقطع هذا كان كافرا عاتيا. And this Aqta, Abu al-Abbas said, this Aqta, he was a vicious kafir, very mean, arrogant kafir. Shadid al-adawati lil-muslimin. He hated Muslims very much. قد أثر على أهل الثغور. He wore down the Muslims on the borders, at the open spots, الثغور. So, when there's the Muslim country, so there would be, like at this time, a Muslim empire that's like a conglomerate of countries all together. A Muslim empire. So some of these Muslim countries, they would be on the borders with non-Muslim lands. So these borders where there's danger, where those borders are dangerous because of being on the border with the non-Muslims, those were called al-Thughur. Thughur is the plural of thaghr. Thaghr means mouth. Basically means an opening here. So the openings at the borders. So the Muslims would have to put armies there at those openings. So قد أثر على أهل الثغور. He wore out the people of the Muslims on the borders. وألح على أهل خوارزم بالسبي والقتل والغارات. And he terrorized the people of Khwarizm by capturing them, kidnapping them, and killing them and invading them. وكان ولاة خراسان يتألفونه وأشباهه من عظماء الأعاجم. And so the governors of Khurasan, they used to give him and his likes some gifts. His likes means the kings of the non-Muslims, of the non-Arabs. عظماء الأعاجم, the kings of the non-Arabs. But these people we're talking about here, all of them are not Arabs. That's a general statement, of course. Maybe there's Arabs amongst them. But this is where? وراء النهر. This is beyond the river of Jayhun. We're talking about deeper in Asia now. Probably these people are Caucasians. فَيَكُفُّ غَارَاتِهِمْ عَنِ الرَّعِيَّةِ. So they would give gifts to these kings and make them stop their raids on the populace. وَيَحْقِنُوا دِمَاءَ الْمُسْلِمِينَ. And like this they would spare the blood of the Muslims. فَيَبْعَثُونَ إِلَى كُلِّ وَاحِدٍ مِّنْهُمْ بِأَمْوَالٍ وَأَلْطَافٍ كَثِيرَةٍ. So they would send to each one of them lots of money and lots of trinkets. وأنواع من فاخر الثياب, and different types of fancy clothes. وإن هذا الكافر استاء في بعض السنين على السلطان. And one year this kafir disrespected the Sultan. ولا أدري لما ذاك. I don't know why that was. استبطأ المبار عن وقتها. Were the gifts late? أم استقل ما بعث إليه في جنب ما بعث إلى نظرائه من الملوك. Or did he find that what was sent to him was little in comparison to what other kings like him were receiving? فأقبل في جنوده. So he came with his army. واستعرض الطرق. And they blocked the paths. فعاث وأفسد وقتل ومثل. And so then they They then, I'm not sure here how to translate afa. I'm not going to look though right now. They committed atrocities and they killed and they maimed. فَعَجَزَ عَنْهُ خُيُولُ خُوَارِزْم, and the horses of Khawarizm couldn't get there. وَبَلَغَ خَبَرُهُ أَبَا الْعَبَّاسِ عَبْدَ اللَّهِ بْنَ طَاهِرٍ رَحِمَهُ اللَّهِ. So the news of this invasion reached Abu al-Abbas, Abdullah ibn Tahir, may Allah have mercy on him. فَأَنْهَضَ إِلَيْهِ أَرْبَعَةً مِّنَ الْقُوَّادِ. So he dispatched 4 commanders. Tahir ibn Ibrahim ibn, I don't remember if that's Mudrik or Mudrak, and Ya'qub ibn Mansur ibn Talha, and Mikal Mawla Tahir, and Harun al-Ayyad. وَشَحَنَ الْبَلَدَ بِالْعَسَاكِرِ وَالْأَسْلِحَةِ, and he loaded the town with soldiers and weapons. وَرَتَّبَهُمْ فِي أَرْبَاعِ الْبَلَدِ, and he arranged them in the quadrants of the town. كُلٌّ فِي رُبَعٍ, each one took a quadrant. فَحَمَوُا الْحَرِيمِ بِإِذْنِ اللَّهِ تَعَالَى, and so they protected the women by the will of God. Exalted is He. ثُمَّ إِنَّ وَادِيَ جَيْحُونَ وَهُوَ الَّذِي فِي أَعْلَى نَهْرِ بَلْخٍ جَمَدَ لَمَّا اشْتَدَّ الْبَرْدُ. Furthermore, the valley of Jayhun, that's the one at the highest part of the river of Balkh. It froze over when the cold intensified. وَهُوَ وَادٍ عَظِيمٍ, it is a large valley. شَدِيدُ الطُّغْيَانِ كَثِيرُ الْآفَاتِ, very hostile. A very hostile valley, and the plants there, the crops there are very susceptible to ruin. وَإِذَا امْتَدَّ كَانَ عَرْضُهُ نَحْوًا مِّن فَرْسَخٍ, and if the width of the river would expand, it would become as wide as farsakh. Yani, so we said, like, if we put the word mile there for farsakh, or kilometer if you want. So just general idea, that is, meaning a big amount. وَإِذَا جَمَدًا طَبَقَ, and when it would freeze, it would seal. فَلَمْ يُوصَلْ مِنْهُ إِلَى شَيْءٍ حَتَّى يُحْفَرَ فِيهِ, so nothing would be reached without digging down into it. It would be covered. When it would freeze over, it would be covered and sealed. So you can't get to anything under that ice without digging. كما تحفر الآبار في الصخور, like digging wells out of boulders. وقد رأيت كثف الجمد 10 أشبار, and I have seen the thickness of the ice, 10 handspans. So that's pretty thick. One handspan is, if you spread your fingers, the distance between the pinky and the thumb. So 10 of those, that's pretty thick ice there. Also, this is nice language here. So if he's quoting her verbatim in Arabic, she has very nice Arabic. So I don't know if she was speaking Arabic or speaking another language and then he translated it. And this is his Arabic. Because this is the woman talking here. وَأُخْبِرْتُ أَنَّهُ كَانَ فِيمَا مَضَى يَزِيدُ عَلَى 20 شِبْرًا. And I was told that in the past, it would become more than 20 hand spans. Can you imagine how cold it must be out there? Subhanallah. So this whole time you're listening to this story here, so are you imagining, like just caravans and wagons and things like that, and rough living? Subhanallah. Very cold. Yani, it gives me the chills just thinking about how cold it must be. It must have been then and there. Subhanallah wa bihamdi. وإذا هو انطبق صار الجمد جسرا لأهل البلد. And so when it freezes over, it would become a bridge for the people of the area. تسير عليه العساكر والعجل والقوافل. Then the soldiers would walk over it, and the load-bearing animals and the caravans. فَيَنْظِمُ مَا بَيْنَ الشَّاطِئَيْنِ. And then it would become a road or a highway, or not highway, but it would become organized. وَرُبَّمَا دَامَ الْجَمَدُ 120 يَوْمًا. And maybe sometimes it would stay frozen for 120 days. 120 days. So that's what? 4 months? 4 months? If every month is 30. So 30, that's 60. And then another 60, that's 120. وَإِذَا قَلَّ الْبَرْدُ فِي عَامٍ بَقِيَ 70 يَوْمًا. And if the cold would be less in any given year, it would stay frozen for 70 days. So that's a month and some change. إِلَى نَحْوِ 3 أشهر. Until about 3 months. So that's an entire season. قالت المرأة. The woman said, فعبر الكافر في خيله إلى باب الحصن. And so the kafir crossed over with his horses to the door of the citadel. وَقَدْ تَحَصَّنَ النَّاسُ. And the people had sought refuge behind the wall of the citadel. وَضَمُّوا أَمْتِعَتَهُمْ. And they brought their luggage. وَصَبَّحُوا الْمُسْلِمِينَ. And they attacked the Muslims in the morning. وَأَضَرُّوا بِهِمْ. They harmed them. فَحُصِرَ مِنْ ذَلِكَ أَهْلُ النَّاحِيَةِ. And the people of the area were detained there. وَأَرَادُوا الْخُرُوجَ. They wanted to flee. فَمَنَعَهُمْ الْعَامِلُ. But the magistrate stopped them. دون أن تتوافى عساكر السلطان. He stopped them from trying to get out before the Sultan's soldiers arrived. وتتلاحق المتطوعة. And before the volunteer fighters catch up to them. فشد طائفة من شبان الناس وأحداثهم. And so some of the young men, they strapped up those Muslims, rahimahumullah. فَتَقَارَبُوا مِنَ السُّورِ. And they went close to the wall. بِمَا أَطَاقُوا حَمْلَهُ مِنَ السِّلَاحِ. They went close to the wall, they stayed close to the wall with whatever weapons they could carry. وَحَمَلُوا عَلَى الْكَفَرَةِ وَحَمَلُوا عَلَى الْكَفَرَةِ. And those brave young men, so they're trying to hold something down in the meantime till the army comes. They went out and they attacked the kuffar. فَتَهَارَجَ الْكَفَرَةِ. And then the kuffar, they faked a retreat. They acted as if they wanted to retreat. فَاسْتَجَرُّوهُمْ مِنْ بَيْنِ الْأَبْنِيَةِ وَالْحِيطَانِ. So they lured those young men from between the buildings and the walls. So now we learned a lesson there. We're not going to let that happen to us, inshallah. If that happened to any one of us, if any of us were in such a situation, you're going to say, La, Shabab, don't go, wait. Maybe it's a trick. Stay close. فَلَمَّا أَصْحَرُوا كَرَّ التُّرْكُ عَلَيْهِمْ. So when they got into the open, that's when the Turkmens came back. وَصَارَ الْمُسْلِمُونَ فِي مِثْلِ الْحَرَجَةِ. So the Muslims wound up in the likes of a forest or the woods. فَتَحَصَّنُوا. So they took cover. وَاتَّخَذُوا دَارَةً يُحَارِبُونَ مِنْ وَرَائِهَا. And they fought from behind something. Some building or the like, Allahu A'lam, or some structure of some sort. And they fought from behind there. وَانْقَطَعَ مَا بَيْنَهُمْ وَبَيْنَ الْحِصُنِ. And they were cut off from the citadel. وَبَعُدَتِ الْمَعُونَةُ عَنْهُمْ. And help was far from them. فَحَارَبُوا كَأَشَدِّ حَرْبٍ. And they fought as hard as they could. وَثَبَتُوا. And they stayed firm. حَتَّى تَقَطَّعَتِ الْأَوْتَارُ وَالْقِسِيِّ. And they fought until their bowstrings popped and their bows snapped. وَأَدْرَكَهُمُ التَّعَبُ. And exhaustion caught them. وَمَسَّهُمُ الْجُوعُ وَالْعَطَشُ. And they were touched by hunger and thirst. وَقُتِلَ مُعَظَمُهُمْ. And most of them were killed. وَأُثْخِنَ الْبَاقُونَ بِالْجِرَاحَاتِ. And the rest of them were severely wounded. وَلَمَّا جَنَّ عَلَيْهِمُ اللَّيْلُ تَحَاجَزَ الْفَرِيقَانِ. When night fell, then the two armies fell back. That's the norm of those old days. قالت المرأة. The woman said, وَرُفِعَتِ النَّارُ عَلَى الْمَنَاظِرِ. The fire was lit on the high places, like the mountaintops, for example. Some high places, something that's like a way to send a signal fast to a far distance. سَاعَةَ عُبُورِ الْكَافِرِ. They did that as soon as that kafir invaded, as soon as he crossed over. فَاتصَّلَ الْخَبَرُ بِالْجُرْجَانِيَّةِ. And the news reached Al-Jurjaniyah. وهي مدينة عظيمة في قاصية خوارزم. That's a large city on the outskirts of Khwarizm. وكان ميكال مولى طاهر بها في عسكر. And Mikal, the Mawla of Tahir, he was there with an army. فخف في الطلب. So he hastened to respond. هيبة للأمير أبي العباس عبد الله بن طاهر رحمه الله. Out of respect for the Amir Abu al-Abbas Abdullah bin Tahir, may Allah have mercy upon him. وركض إلى هزارصب في يوم وليلة 40 فرسخا. And he ran to Hazarsb in a day and a night, 40 farsakhs, 40 parsangs. بفراسخ خوارزم, according to the parsangs of Khwarizm. وفيها فضل كثير على فراسخ خراسان. And those are much longer than the parsangs of Khurasan. وغدا الترك للفراغ من أمر أولئك النفر. Then in the morning, the Turks or the Turkmens, they came to wipe out the remaining fighters of that group. فبينما هم كذلك إذ ارتفعت لهم الأعلام السود. And when they were in the process of doing that, the black flags appeared for them, or something like that. وسمعوا أصوات الطبول. الطبول. وسمعوا أصوات الطبول. And they heard the sounds of the drums. فأفرجوا عن القوم. So they retreated, leaving those people. ووافى ميكال موضع المعركة. And Mikal arrived to the battlefield. فوارى القتلى وحمل الجرحى الجرحى فوافى القتلى وحمل الجرحى. And so he wrapped up the dead and he carried the wounded. Subhanallah. People talk about our religion, and those kuffar, they are the warmongers and the killers. They like to kill indiscriminately. Jews and other than Jews, not the Muslims who do that. قالت المرأة, the woman said, وأدخل الحصن علينا عشية ذلك زهاء 400 جنازة. 400 funerals were held in the citadel that evening. فلم تبق دار إلا حمل إليها قتيل. And there was not a house but that a dead person was carried to it. وعمت المصيبة. And the calamity was general, widespread. وارتجت الناحية بالبكاء. And the whole area shook with crying. قالت, she said, وَوُضِعَ زَوْجِي بَيْنَ يَدَيَّ قَتِيلًا. My husband was then put in front of me dead. فأدركني من الجزع والهلع عليه ما يدرك المرأة الشابة على زوجها. And then I was overtaken by the panic and the shock that a young woman would be overtaken by over her husband. Abil Awlad, the father of her children. وَكَانَتْ لَنَا عِيَالٍ. And we had dependents. قالت فاجتمع النساء من قراباتي والجيران يسعدنني على البكاء. She said, so then the women of my family and the neighbors came to help me through the crying. وَجَاءَ الصِّبْيَانُ وَهُمْ أَطْفَالٌ. And the children came and they were just babies. لَا يَعْقِلُونَ مِنَ الْأَمْرِ شَيْئًا. They didn't even know what was going on. يَطْلُبُونَ الْخُبْزِ. Asking for bread. وَلَيْسَ عِنْدِي مَا أُعْطِيهِمْ. And I didn't have anything to give them. فَضِقْتُ صَدْرًا بِأَمْرِي. And so I became so depressed because of my matter. It's like, I don't know what to do. What am I going to do? ثُمَّ إِنِّي سَمِعْتُ أَذَانَ الْمَغْرِبِ. Then I did indeed hear the call for the Maghrib prayer. فَفَزِعْتُ إِلَى الصَّلَاةِ. So I hastened to the prayer. فَصَلَّيْتُ مَا قَضَى لِي رَبِّي. And then I prayed as much as my Lord destined for me. ثُمَّ سجدت أدعو وأتضرع إلى الله تعالى. And then I prostrated, making dua and begging and pleading Allah, exalted is He. وأسأله الصبر وأن يجبر يتم صبياني. And I asked Him for patience. And I asked Him to patch or mend the orphanage of my children. Yani, my children have become orphans now. So I asked Allah Ta'ala to help us, or to help them. فَذَهَبَ بِيَ النَّوْمُ فِي سُجُودِي. And then sleep overtook me in my prostration. فَرَأَيْتُ فِي مَنَامِي كَأَنِّي فِي أَرْضٍ حَسْنَاءٍ. And then I saw in my dream as if I am in a beautiful land, ذَاتِ حِجَارَةٍ, one that had many stones. وَأَنَا أَطْلُبُ زَوْجَتِي, and I was looking for my husband. فَنَادَانِي رَجُلٌ. So a man called out to me, إِلَى أَيْنَ أَيَّتُهَا الْحُرَّةِ. Where are you going, miss? قُلْتُ أَطْلُبُ زَوْجِي. I said, I'm looking for my husband. فَقَالَ خُذِي ذَاتَ الْيَمِينِ. He said, take the right. قالت فأخذت ذات اليمين. She said, so I took the right. فرفع لي أرض سهلة طيبة الري. And then there was before me a plain. Yani, أرض سهلة means like a flat land that's easy to traverse, not hilly and not mountainous. طيبة الري, I'm not sure. ظاهرة العشب, with plenty of bushes. وإذا قصور وأبنية لا أحفظ أن أصفها. And behold, there were castles and buildings that I am unable to describe. وَلَمْ أَرَ مِثْلَهَا, and I never saw something like that. وَإِذَا أَنْهَارٌ تَجْرِي عَلَى وَجْهِ الْأَرْضِ بِغَيْرِ أَخَادِيدٍ. And behold, there were rivers or streams flowing on the surface of the ground without being in banks, just flowing over the top of the ground. لَيْسَ لَهَا حَافَاتٌ. فَانْتَبَهْتُ إِلَى قَوْمٍ جُلُوسٍ. And then I came in contact with some people. إِلَى قَوْمٍ جُلُوسٍ, some people who are sitting. حَلَقًا حَلَقًا, they were sitting in circles. عَلَيْهِمْ ثِيَابٌ خُضْرٌ, they were wearing green clothing. قَدْ عَلَاهُمُ النُّورُ, and they were engulfed in light. فَإِذَا هُمُ الَّذِينَ قُتِلُوا فِي الْمَعْرَكَةِ, and behold, they were the people who were killed in the battle. يَأْكُلُونَ عَلَى مَوَائِدَ بَيْنَ أَيْدِيهِمْ, they were eating from table spreads, from the likes of picnic spreads placed in front of them. فَجَعَلْتُ أَتَخَلَّلُهُمْ وَأَتَصَفَّحُ وُجُوهَهُمْ. So I started going between them, investigating their faces. أَبْغِي زَوْجِي لِكَيْ يَنْظُرَنِي, seeking my husband so that he would see me. فَنَادَانِي يَا RaHmah. And so he called me. He saw me and I didn't see him. And so he called out to me, oh RaHmah. فَيَمَّمْتُ الصَّوْتِ, and so I followed the sound. I followed the voice. فَإِذَا بِهِ فِي مِثْلِ حَالِ مَنْ رَأَيْتُ مِنَ الشُّهَدَاءِ. And behold, he had the same situation that I saw from the other martyrs. وَجْهُهُ مِثْلُ الْقَمَرِ. وَجْهُهُ مِثْلُ الْقَمَرِ لَيْلَةَ الْبَدْرِ. His face was like the moon on the night of the full moon. وَهُوَ يَأْكُلُ مَعَ رُفْقَةٍ لَهُ قُتِلُوا يَوْمَئِذٍ مَعَهُ. And he was eating with a group of his who were killed on that day with him. فَقَالَ لِأَصْحَابِهِ, and so he said to his companions, إِنَّ هَذِهِ الْبَائِسَةَ جَائِعَةٌ مُنْذُ الْيَوْمِ. Indeed, this poor woman is hungry. She has been hungry all day. أَفَتَأْذَنُونَ لِي أَنْ أُنَاوِلَهَا شَيْئًا تَأْكُلُهُ. Do you permit me to give her something to eat? فَأَذِنُوا لَهُ. And so they gave him the permission. فَنَاوَلَنِي كِسْرَةَ خُبْزٍ. And so he gave me a piece of bread, or a slice of bread. قالت وأنا أعلم حينئذ أنه خبز. She said, I knew at that time that it was bread. ولكن لا أدري كيف يخبز. But I did not know how could such bread be made. هو أشد بياضا من الثلج واللبن. It was whiter than snow and milk. وأحلى من العسل والسكر. And sweeter than honey and sugar. وألين من الزبد والسمن. And softer than butter and fat. Or maybe ghee. فأكلته. And so I ate it. فَلَمَّا اسْتَقَرَّ فِي جَوْفِي. And then when it settled in my belly, قال, he said, اذهبي, go, كفاك الله مؤنة الطعام والشراب ما حييت في الدنيا. Allah has sufficed you food and drink for the rest of your life in the world. فَانْتَبَهْتُ مِنْ نَوْمِي شَبْعًا رَيًّا. Then I woke up from my sleep satiated and quenched. لا أحتاج إلى طعام ولا شراب. Not needing any food nor drink. وما ذقتهما منذ ذلك اليوم إلى يومي هذا. And I have not tasted either since that day until this day of mine. وَلَا شَيْئًا يَأْكُلُهُ النَّاسِ. And I have not tasted anything that the people eat. وَقَالَ أَبُو الْعَبَّاسِ. Abu al-Abbas said, وَكَانَتْ تَحْضُرُنَا. She used to be in our company. وَكُنَّا نَأْكُلْ. And we would be eating. فَتَتَنَحَّى. And she would go off to the side. وَتَأْخُذُ عَلَىٰ أَنْفِهَا. And she would hold her nose. تزعم أنها تتأذى من رائحة الطعام, claiming that she is bothered by the smell of the food. فسألتها. And so I asked her, أتتغذى بشيء أو تشرب شيئا غير الماء? Do you seek nutrition by anything, or do you drink anything other than water? فقالت لا. And so she said, no. فسألتها هل يخرج منها ريح أو أذى كما يخرج من الناس. And so I asked her if gas or any excrement comes out of her like what comes out of people. قالت لا عهد لي بالأذى منذ ذلك الزمان. She said, I have not experienced excrement since that time. قلت والحيض. I said, what about menses? أظنها قالت انقطع بانقطاع الطعم. I think she said, it stopped since the eating stopped. قلت هل تحتاجين حاجة النساء إلى الرجال? I said, do you have the women's need for men? قالت أما تستحي مني تسألني عن مثل هذا? She said, you're not shy to ask me something like this? قلت إني لعلي أحدث الناس عنك. I said, indeed, perhaps I will tell the people about you. ولا بد أن أستقصي. And so it is necessary that I be thorough. قالت لا أحتاج. She said, I do not need it. قلت فتنامين. I said, so you sleep? قالت نعم أطيب نوم. She said, yes, the sweetest of sleep. قلت فما ترين في منامك? I said, what do you see in your dream? قالت مثل ما ترون. She said, like you all see. قلت فَتَجِدِينَ لِفَقْدِ الطَّعَامِ وَهْنًا فِي نَفْسِكَ. I said, do you experience, due to the lack of food, any weakness in yourself? قالت ما أحسست بجوع منذ طعمت ذلك الطعام. She said, I never felt hungry since I ate that food. وكانت تقبل الصدقة. And this woman, she used to accept charity. فقلت لها, so I said to her, ما تصنعين بها? What do you do with it? قالت أكتسي وأكسو ولدي. She said, I clothe myself and I clothe my children. قلت فهل تجدين البرد وتتأذين بالحر? So I said to her, do you experience cold? And are you bothered by the heat? قالت نعم. She said, yes. قلت فهل يدركك كلل اللغوب والإعياء إذا مشيت? I said, do you experience exhaustion when you walk? قالت نعم. ألست من البشر? She said, yes. Am I not human? قلت فتتوضئين للصلاة? I said, do you make wudu for prayer? قالت نعم. She said, yes. قلت لم. I said, why? قالت أمرني الفقهاء بذلك. She said, the scholars commanded me to do so. So it could be inferred from that answer that she's not a scholar. As if from that answer, she's a layman. She said, the scholars told me to do so. قلت إنهم أفتوها على حديث لا وضوء إلا من حدث أو نوم. I say they gave her that answer based on the hadith. There is no wudu except for an impurity or for sleeping. So she doesn't have the impurity, so what's left? That she sleeps. فذكرت لي أن بطنها وذكرت لي أن بطنها لاصق بظهرها. And she mentioned to me that her stomach was stuck to her back. فأمرت امرأة من نسائنا. And so I commanded a woman in our company. فنظرت. And so she looked. Probably means I requested from her. فنظرت. And so she looked. So it means she looked without looking at the awra that's not permissible for her to see. فَإِذَا بَطْنُهَا كَمَا وَصَفَتْ. And behold, her stomach was as she described. وَإِذَا قَدْ اتَّخَذَتْ كِيسًا فَضَمَّتِ الْقُطُنَ وَشَدَّتْهُ عَلَى بَطْنِهَا. And behold, she took a bag and filled it with cotton. So it was like she has a pillow. And she tied it to her stomach. كَيْ لَا يَنْقَصِفَ ظَهْرُهَا إِذَا مَشَتْ. So that her back would not snap when she walked. Subhanallah wa bihamdi. Subhanallah wa bihamdi. Maybe she experienced something. So she said she had to take care of herself. Maybe as her stomach was shrinking, she experienced something when she's walking. So she had to put something for herself. ثم لم أزل أختلف إلى هزارصب بين السنتين والثلاث. And then I never stopped going to Hazarsb every 2 or 3 years. فتحضرني. And she would meet with me. فأعيد مسألتها. And then I would interview her again. فلا تزيد ولا تنقص. And she would not add more or subtract anything. وعرضت كلامها على عبد الله بن عبد الرحمن الفقيه. And I showed her talk to Abdullah ibn Abd al-Rahman, the jurist. فقال أنا أسمع هذا الكلام منذ نشأت. He said, I've been hearing this talk since I grew up. فلا أجد من يدفعه أو يزعم أنه سمع أنها تأكل أو تشرب أو تتغوط. And I do not find anyone who rejects it or claims that he heard that she eats or drinks or defecates. Intaha, end quote.